Vampires are always great topics for comics, movies, TV, and games alike, because honestly, nobody really likes vampires, and we love killing them. And if you see someone sparkling, you just think that they're wearing too much body glitter. But which of these evil vamps needs to get the good old machete to the neck or a Colt to the head? That's what we're exploring today. Greetings, Nerd Squad, welcome back to Top 10 Nerd. I'm Connor Monroe, and this is the top 10 most powerful vampire villains. Let's do it. And at 10, Baron Blood. Lord John Falsworth was the youngest of two sons of Lord William Falsworth, one of the wealthiest members of the British aristocracy in late Victorian and Edwardian times. John left embittered when his older brother Montgomery inherited the title and the bulk of his estate upon William's death, shortly before World War I. Eventually, Falsworth sought the castle Dracula in Romania in order to find and control the Dracula as a means of achieving immense wealth and power. However, Falsworth fell victim to Dracula's hypnotic powers because, you know, he's a vampire, and was turned into a vampire himself. Dracula bid Falsworth to return to England to wreak havoc upon the country that had repulsed him earlier. Although Falsworth's activities remained largely unrevealed during this time, at some point he again offered his services to the emerging fascist regime in Germany. That's right, folks. We gotta... can't really say it. German scientists performed painful experiments which enabled him to avoid his vulnerability to direct sunlight, and during World War II, German intelligence once again sent Falsworth to England to continue a new reign of terror. Wonderful. And at 9, Batman. Bruce Wayne died when the vigilante Batman was turned into a vampire. With now only one side of his dual life to take care of, the vampire haunts the nights, frightening and biting criminals. With most of the vampires being destroyed, Batman confronted Dracula and killed him by impaling the ancient vampire on a tree that was destroyed by lightning. However, the victory came at a cost, because during the fight Dracula successfully drained the last of Batman's blood, destroying his humanity. Nonetheless, Batman retained his sense of self and assured Alfred that only Bruce Wayne had died, the Batman will live on. And thanks to his new vampiric powers, he would be able to protect Gotham City forever. Because, you know, immortality. Not only that though, but then Batman went on to turn the other Justice League members into vampires. Batman lost his supernatural companion of a vampirized Catwoman when she took a fatal crossbow bolt that was aimed at him. Overcome with rage over the death of the only person able to control his bloodlust, Batman killed the Joker and drained all his blood, which only led to more draining. And at 8, Xarus. Xarus is the son of Dracula. Angry with humanity encroaching into vampire territory and unhappy with his founder's leadership, Xarus created a secret alliance with the leaders of various vampire sects. The Claw sect, which was warriors, the Charnaputra sect, Mysticos sect, Nosferatu sect, Atlantean sect, the Moshka sect, and the Siren sect, all to overthrow his father. He accomplished this at the Centennial Meeting of the Vampires. Yeah, they have a meeting every 100 years. He and his allies drove stakes into Dracula and cut his head off, and his allies, like Mysticos, invented devices which cancelled the frequencies of light that were harmful to vampires. So Xarus decided to use these devices to create a new, more dominant place in the world for vampires. He gave these devices to his allies so they could stage a raid on Krieger sect's fortress, eliminating their senior leadership. A vampire with devices that cancel out what the vampire's weaknesses are? No thanks. And at number 7, Harkon Volkihar. Lord Volkihar is actually the main antagonist of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim's DLC Dawnguard's main storyline. This vampire lord is not only a vampire, but he can also shapeshift into a vampire lord form that gives him a boost to all of his abilities and magics. Lord Volkihar once read a prophecy about a bow that could blot out the sun permanently, causing Skyrim to be a land free for vampires to roam. But to complete this prophecy, he needs Auriel's bow, which is technically also known as Akatosh's bow, since Auriel is just the elven name for Akatosh, and a daughter of Cold Harbor, which was a pure-blooded vampire made by the Daedric Lord Molag Bal after a, let's call it a ritual. This nearly came to fruition when you brought him both the bow and his own daughter before your final battle, so if you didn't end up winning, you'd be handing this vampiric lord everything he needs to take over Skyrim, so yeah, it's pretty messed up. And that's even if you don't become a vampire lord in the storyline, which you also can do. However, you end up still having to kill Harkon anyway, since he doesn't really need you anymore, etc. So yeah, pretty powerful dude, unless you have like a 100 archery skill. And at 6, The Flash. Barry Allen, aka The Flash, is one of the former heroes who turned into a bloodthirsty vampire after Batman spread the vampiric plague throughout the world of Earth 43. He confronts Wally West from a different world and attempts to kill him, however before he can succeed he was killed by Roy Harper from his world, who shot him with wooden arrows in the back. Because, you know, it's like wooden stakes. But even if he went down easily, that does not mean he wasn't powerful, since, you know, a vampire with the powers of the Flash, and not just any Flash, but Barry Allen, the literal Speed Force himself, basically. Yeah, I don't think you really need to see why that's absolutely terrifying. If he hadn't have been killed by Roy, he would have wiped out humanity, and I think that's the reason why he had to be killed, so that didn't happen, because there is literally no way to defend against that. Especially since Batman, the one who always has a plan to stop Justice League members, was the one who turned him, so there's no one really to fight him now. Halfway through into number 5, Morbius. First being introduced in Amazing Spider-Man number 101 in 1971, Dr. Michael Morbius was a scientist born in Greece who became a Nobel Prize winning biochemist. He suffered from a blood disease and developed an experimental treatment in an effort to cure it. Its side effects though turned him into a vampire adjacent who needs to consume blood in order to survive, and gain typical vampire characteristics such as an aversion to sunlight and the powers of flight, enhanced strength, speed, and a healing factor. His overall appearance changed as well. He gained fangs, his nose flattened to appear more bat-like, and his skin became extremely pale, like me. But he has less of a nose and sharper teeth. Additionally, the victims of his bite would turn into living vampires themselves, which is absolutely nuts. This character also made an appearance in the 90s Spider-Man animated series, which is literally my favorite thing in the world. However, since it was a kid's show, he couldn't consume blood, so instead he consumed plasma. And his origin was changed as well, so it could kind of be intertwined with Peter's, when he spliced his DNA with Peter Parker's using the neurogenic recombinator, and then a bat jumped in front of the ray. And at 4, Dracula. In Marvel Comics, Count Dracula is a centuries-old vampire, sorcerer, and Transylvanian nobleman who rules from his namesake fortress known as Castle Dracula. He is the supreme ruler and world's most powerful vampire. Originally the Wallachian ruler Vlad the Impaler, he turned himself into a vampire following a battle with the invading Ottoman Empire, seeking revenge to, destroy his enemies, because of course. Driven by a lust for power, companionship, and blood, his centuries of undead existence have brought him into conflict with vampire hunters, other immortals, and in the modern age, superheroes. Dracula has a vast network of loyal servants, cultists, brides, and minions who regularly assist him and attempt to resurrect him if he actually ends up dying. Recently, Dracula and his followers have taken up refuge in Chernobyl, creating a new vampire nation and bringing him into conflict with the Avengers. But given that he's in essence the original vampire, I feel like he deserves to be on this list. Also, in the Marvel universe, his name is Vlad, which just makes me think of Vlad Plasmius from Danny Phantom, and I love Danny Phantom, so. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, Ultraman. Ultraman was turned into a vampire by Batman, which doesn't really make sense because he's a Kryptonian, so without kryptonite fangs, how did Batman pierce his skin? But, whatever. Ultraman, along with many Supermen of the multiverse, were kidnapped by the Prophecy to steal their powers, but they were freed by the Justice Incarnate. Later on, Ultraman confronted Wally West from a different world along with the Flash and attempted to kill him, but Wally managed to knock him down with his super speed fist and hold him down with dozens of wooden stakes. And while he seemingly was defeated by those wooden stakes, I don't think you need an explanation as to why a Superman with vampire powers is a bad idea. Okay, that's horrifying. Although this does beg the question, does it cancel out the whole sun powers thing, since vampires are weak to sunlight but Superman uses the yellow sun to get his powers? Or is it just that a Kryptonian vampire is double weak to a red sun? Because he's already double weak to a red sun, but does that mean that he doesn't really have powers? I don't know. It's an interesting debate that I believe you should have in the comments, but respectfully. Can't believe I'm saying that, because no one's gonna listen. Who am I kidding? Penultimately, in at number 2, the Alpha Vampire. In the world of Supernatural, the Alpha Vampire was the very first vampire and basically father of all other vampires. He was one of the alpha monsters captured and interrogated by Crowley and Castiel in their efforts to locate Purgatory. He escaped Crowley's prison though and set up a new nest in North Dakota, and then Montana. He was later tracked down for his blood for the weapon to defeat the Leviathans, and ultimately recognizing a common enemy, he actually gave the Winchesters his blood without a fight. During an attack on the British men of letters though, the Alpha alpha vampire was killed by Sam Winchester with the cult, like the demon cult that can for some reason kill literally everything. I don't know how, but whatever. The alpha vampire is first glimpsed briefly flashing in the minds of his children as it's commanding them to recruit more of his army in like season 6. Nothing is known about this particular monster aside from the fact that its messages can be heard by all other vampires, and he can also just knock them out if he wants to. Dean ends up seeing this vision while he is infected, but yeah, the daddy of all other vamps? That's a powerful boy. Finally, in at number 1, Varnae. Varnae was a human or Gigantopithecus sorcerer that once lived in like 10,000 BC. Varnae served in the cult of the Darkholders under Thusla Doom. Injured due to the actions of King Kull of Volscia, a dying Varnae was transformed into a vampire by sorcerers of the pre-cataclysmic Atlantis, because he was born in Atlantis. He allegedly was the last survivor among the vampires created in Atlantis before the Great Cataclysm, and ruled over Earth's vampires. But in 1459, tired of his ages-long existence, Varnae chose Dracula as his successor and Lord of Earth's vampires, and imparted much of his supernatural power to him by forcing Dracula to drink his blood. Varnae then committed suicide by exposing himself to direct sunlight. However, years later, Marie Laveau, desperate for vampire blood, had kidnapped Doctor Strange's friend Morgana Blessing and his brother Victor. Strange was about to deliver the spell page to Laveau when reason reasserted itself and he forever banished the page from Earth, basically. Laveau, possessing the Darkhold, though, invoked a spell contained within for resurrecting the Lord of the Vampires. So yeah, the very first vampire of all time in the Marvel Universe, who killed himself with sunlight and then was resurrected, and also made Dracula, yeah, that's a number 1 for sure. There's no contest, even from the alpha vamp. No way. There we have it, friends, the top 10 most powerful vampire villains. Who's your favorite vampire? And please don't say anyone with the last name Cullen. And who did you expect to see on this list? Be sure you let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been and shall remain Connor Monroe, and I'll see you in another video.